Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Today we're working on the 25th anniversary car, Pauline. We're going to start to see if we can get a lot of the engine cooling hoses fixed in their permanent spots today. And to do that, we've got a little surprise for you. All right, as I said in the open, we have a little surprise for you. We had to install our Gen 1, Gen 2 engine cover on here simply because we want to see how much space we're going to have. Now, we got this from Mike Forte. This has been modified, meaning Mike's done some work and put some relief cuts into the cover itself, and then he's manufactured these standoffs which go into the existing lugs into the intake manifold. So that holds it in place. I'm not really happy about the wing nuts, but I'm sure we can find a solution for that. Maybe get some acorn nuts, some deep acorn nuts to do the same thing, but we'll see. So with that on, we've also got the intake tubing and air filter and whatnot installed on the car as well. Now these are just kind of shoved on the car so that we can see where everything is going to have to route, because it's much easier to route the little things around the big things than vice versa. And so you can see we've got a coolant hose. This is our air bypass or steam port vent that comes off the top of the intake manifold or the front of the intake manifold for our coolant, which has to go into this right here. And so I'm going to try to find a way to get that in there that looks nice. You know, just like everything, it's going to be a compromise. We've got to find a way to make everything work while still trying to make it look nice in the end. Now, I do have some of the stuff disconnected because I was experimenting this afternoon with the valve covers or coil covers that came with this kit as well. I think we may be able to make them work, meaning we'll make some relief holes in them for this, and then try to make ourselves some bracketry to go on some of the existing perches so that we can get the coil cover to mount up on this side. The other side is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have to cut or trim the front of the coil cover around our reservoirs, and then we'll have to do the same thing. We'll probably have to put a relief cut for this right here. This is our windshield wiper cable. But I think we'll be able to make the one on this side work too. I haven't gotten into it. This is some of the fine details we'll probably get into while the car body is away at Miller's. But for now, I think we've got a pretty good idea of where we're going to start putting some stuff. So we have the heater tubes that come out of the firewall here, 1 and 2, and we have to find a place to mount. You can see I picked up some heater hose. This valve. Now this valve has to mount with this side, these two ports here, as intake, and these two ports as output. And I don't know which spot's going to be the best for this, because there's not a whole lot of room underneath this cover. So I'm tempted to bring this thing out in the fender well, somewhere like this, and then pipe our two, let me set this down. Pipe our two hoses. One comes from this side, one comes from this side. Underneath here, they're going to pop out through here and then into the fender well over here. And then we'll have a nice straight shot for our wire, and you go back through and into the cockpit. but that's something I'm going to have to probably discuss with the car owner and see what he wants. If I think that it's going to be better there service-wise too. Looking at this valve, and I've been on the phone discussing this valve with one of my buddies who's a electronics nerd. This actuator that sits on top of this valve is nothing more than a GM blend door actuator. It's got the same 5 pins in it. Now you can get these in 2-pin, 3-pin, 4-pin, and 5-pin. This happens to be a 5-pin. We've got to call into the company that makes this to see if we can figure out a way to just use this as an open and or closed valve. There were much less expensive solutions than this, but this is the one that the car owner decided to go with. And so we're going to try to make this work. So that's what I've got to fit into the car over here. And we have some of the other hoses in place. Now I did pick up about 12 feet of Gates heater hose. And the reason I got that hose is because every other hose that we've got on the car is going to be a Gates hose. So we've got a hose that we picked up that's going to go from our steam port on the side of the radiator up into our surge tank here. I'm going to cut it somewhere in here. And then we've got the steam port coming from the engine that's going to go into here. And I'm not sure how I'm going to route this. This right here seems about the most logical solution right now. But we'll see. You know, nothing's set in stone quite yet. And then we have one out of the bottom of the surge tank that's going to go from there to here, and that's just going to be that standard Gates 5/8 hose. So I'll probably start with that one now that I know where the intake and everything need to go. And then from there, I'll work on those heater hoses. So both of those heater hoses, there's one on this side of the engine, there's one on this side of the engine, are going to have to come this way and then through that valve and then into the heater box. So let me start working on that. Don't know if I'll bring you back tonight because it's already late. It's about past dinner time for the puppies, so I got to go in and feed them. But I may make it back out here tonight, but I don't think I am going to pick up the camera. I'm just going to try to get some of that stuff done and in place, or at least the hoses routed, even if I don't put the hose clamps on them. But yeah, that's the start. We're back on the 25th anniversary car. We're still working on Jim's car as well. It's easier to work on that one on the ground, and Jim's up in the air right now rather than vice versa. So this is the way we're going to work it for the next couple of weeks probably. Yeah. All right, everybody, next day. We're not breaking any new ground here, but we are modifying some parts. So if you remember, for the upper radiator hose, we went ahead and we had the owner of the car order an F-150 upper hose. It fits, but it has the same situation with the power steering belt want to self-clearance itself against that coupler that snaps on. So what I did is I pulled the locking pin, which I've got over on the bench, off. The locking pin goes around the outside. It's just a stainless steel ring that kind of fits in here and holds this in place. Now, if you look, I got the flashlight right here. This notch right here was the factory notch. And so what I did is I put a new notch in it about, 3/8 of an inch. This would be clockwise into the end of the hose coupler, and then I just test fit it, and it fits. So what it does, it reorients that tube that comes out of the end of the engine block, or the front of the engine block, and it just turns it, in this case, counterclockwise. So it's clockwise on the hose coupler, but it's counterclockwise on the front of the block. I hope that makes sense. And it looks like this is going to work. So I'll walk you over and I'll show you where this all kind of lays out on the car now. And I've got some of the other hoses kind of in place where I think they're going to work the best. They don't work out perfectly. as far as where they exit the top of the engine cover, but it's the best way that they're going to work, so we don't kink any hoses, and we get good coolant flow, and we keep everything kind of out of the way. So let me take you over to the car, and we'll take a look. All right, so you can see, if I put this hose on in the orientation that it originally was, it's going to be right about here. And then you can see just how close that gets to that belt for the power steering pump. It's actually the belt on the front of the water pump, but regardless, it goes and feeds the power steering pump. Now, in a stock configuration without power steering, this wouldn't be an issue. However, we have power steering, so it's the way it is. So if I take this loose and I clock it just a little bit like this to our other notch, and I slide that on, you can see all the clearance we've gained right there. And it's still, if I hold this end down below here, it's still going to be able to tie into the top of our radiator here. So I think that's going to work. What we did on some of these other hoses, we've got the heater supply. I believe this is a supply, driver's side supply. I'm going to have to check, but regardless, I'll straighten them out when I get them into our 4-way valve. I've got the engine driver's side and the engine passenger side routed more towards the front of the engine, and they're going to drop down about here, and then I'm probably going to lash these together about there. Our bleed, our air bleed from the engine, the top of the engine block, is coming here, and I've routed it along the side of the throttle body. And this hose worked out perfect with the pre-bends it's got on it and everything. And that's going to come right to here. Now that just clears our 90 that comes in here and drops down over into here for our mass airflow sensor and air filter, which is sitting on top of the engine right now. So I think that's going to all be really good. We've got this one here, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut this one, and I'm going to put it into the front of our surge tank. I've got to pull off all the stickers too. I didn't want to pull off any of the stickers until I was sure these were going to work, because the auto parts stores have a hard time taking these back with no part numbers on them. These two hoses over here, actually these 3 hoses, we ordered from Rock Auto. I did get the bulk 5/8 hose at the local auto parts store. So what I'm thinking on this 4-way valve is we're going to bring these 2 hoses, something like this, and we're going to mount that valve right over here inside the fender well, just behind the rear splash. That'll kind of get it out of the way and still allow us to take those hoses back over into our heater over here. So I'm not gonna cut anything here yet. As a matter of fact, I'll probably pull the other hose, the other 6-foot length of hose that I have out of the package, instead of looping this one like I've got now, just so that, and this is my OCD, just so that all the lettering on the hoses is the same way. I know it sounds silly, but that kind of stuff just bothers me. So I'm going to continue working on that tonight. Now that I've got this top radiator hose kind of figured out, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take some of the 5/8 heater hose that we have, I'm going to run it from here down to the bottom of our surge tank, and that one should be able to be finished, done. Same thing with the upper radiator hose. I ought to be able to cut that end of it and connect it and be done with it. So I'll be able to put the retaining clip on there, and that one should be all finished. It's just the heater hoses and some of these secondary hoses that I'm still dealing with. This one I ought to be able to finish up here. I ought to be able to put clamps on both ends, and it should be done. The same thing with this this air bleed to the top of the engine block. It should be pretty much done as well and not in our way. So I may finish that one up, and then probably tomorrow night I'm going to work on that 4-way valve and getting a bracket made for that, because probably when this thing goes to paint, we'll pull the bracket off and take it in and have it powder coated, because hopefully by then I'll have some other pieces that need to be powder coated as well, but we'll see. So I may bring you back again tonight, or I may bring you back again tomorrow night. It all depends, but that's what we're working on tonight in the shop. All right, I usually don't film this late in the evening, It's late. I think it's close to 9 or 9:30 at night. But I've been out here working, and I got to a point that I thought, you know, better than catching up tomorrow, I just wanted to get caught up today. So I've got a lot of the hoses in place right now, and I'm kind of at a good stopping point to end the video. But we'll pick up on the next one for the 25th anniversary car. I've got some inquiries into the company that makes the controller, the 4-port valve that we're going to be using on this, about exactly how to wire this thing. One of my buddies and I have a theory on the way we think it's going to wire, but we want to double check to make sure that is exactly how it's going to wire in. I also had a call into the car owner, and I want to see if he wants to go ahead and go through with using this valve rather than some of the more simple solutions for this. So before I cut any of the hoses or anything like that, I want to make sure that this is the route that we're going to go. Anyways, I've got a bunch of the hoses in place. So as I've pointed out before, we made a new notch in that collar for the hose that's going to be our top radiator hose. And so I've got that in place. I've got it clipped in where it's going to stay. And you can see there's a finger width's worth of room underneath this collar now. Now, it did deform the hose just a little bit here, but we still have full flow. So basically all it did is as we pulled the hose up on this end over here, we're pulling it up, it just twisted the hose a little bit. And so when it does that, it kind of flattens out the top portion of it, but we're still going to get full flow. And then over on this side, I went ahead and I terminated it with a stainless steel band clamp. So that's in place. We clear the bottom of our expansion tank perfectly. So we've got about a finger's width of room underneath there, and everything is held in place really nice. We have the front steam port vent that goes to the radiator in place, and on this, because they look nicer, I used the stainless steel fuel injection hose clamps on that. So one here, and then I used one over here as well. So those are both in place. I may end up adding a clamp, a cushion clamp right here, but the hose is pretty steady. It's not moving around a whole lot. That may change when it gets some weight in it from some coolant. So I'm thinking at worst, I'll add a single cushion clamp to it right there. We have the hose in here from the bottom of the expansion tank to the front of the engine block. I've got a clamp on this side. I'm missing a clamp for the other side. So you can't see it right now, but there's no clamp on the other side. So I'm going to have to stop by my favorite hardware store and pick up some more of these clamps right here. I'm trying to stay with all US made clamps, and that's becoming a tough thing to do because more and more parts are being made offshore. But regardless, I'm going to pick up another one of these, and we should have that finished up here in the next day or two. Moving on to the heater hoses from the block, we have those in place. We've got the 90-degree fittings. These were supplied by Factory 5. Normally, this would just be a bypass with a restrictor in this hose over to the other side. And since we're doing a heater, we're going to run these through our 4-port heater bypass valve, which is going to mount over there. And we've got that in place. The steam port vent from the engine is in place here, again, with a fuel injection clamp on it, because, again, they look just a little bit nicer. And we routed that around the back of everything here next to the throttle body, and then into the expansion tank right here, and you can see that looks really nice, and it still allows that 90-degree fitting on the air intake to pass by it, and no interference whatsoever on that. Over here, as I showed you, we have the 90-degree fitting, again, that's supplied by Factory 5 in there, and we've got the heater hose connected with a clamp on there. That's going to be underneath the engine cover. We still have some vacuum ports that we're going to have to block off, and I need to talk to Ford Racing about a vacuum supply source for the fuel pressure regulator, but that's for another day. And then, as I said, I've got the heater hoses running long. I replaced the loop that I had, and now I have both hoses, both pieces of hose I bought, 2 6-footers, running with the lettering in the same direction, because like I said, it just bugs me when the OCD kicks in and you see the lettering running in different directions. It just drives me nuts. So we're going to end up probably mounting that that valve in here somewhere. So here's the top 3/4 inch rail, here's the lower, and I think what we may do is make a bracket that goes from the top one to the bottom one, and then that valve will clamp on right here. We'll get that bracket powder coated black to match all the rest of the panels in the car, and then these hoses are going to continue from here to our heater right here. So they're basically just going to snake right through here and then in and back to our heater port, so top and bottom right there. And that's probably going to finish that off. Now I do have our hoses right here for our fuel system. So I've got the hoses all made up and ready to go in, but I want to get those heater hoses in first, because it's going to be far more easy to snake these smaller fuel hoses around the heater hoses than vice versa. So once we get those heater hoses in place and we know for sure where our 4-port valve is going to go, then I can get all of the fuel lines in place. So I've got 2 fuel lines coming up from here into our regulator for supply and return, and then 1 out the other side over into our fuel rail right there. The reason that I have to call Ford Racing is because there are some questions about where to pick up a vacuum source for the fuel pressure regulator. And there's been some reports from guys on the forums and Facebook groups that if you connect it, you get false readings, and then it'll throw a custom tune off and some other stuff. And so I'd just rather get these questions squared away now than wait until we first start the thing, have it throw codes, and then have to backtrack to find out what we did wrong. If we can get those questions answered now, hopefully we'll have an easier time getting this thing to first start. Regardless, I think I'm going to close this one out here, and I'll catch up with all of you on the next one, where hopefully we'll be terminating the ends of those heater hoses into the heater, getting the fuel lines done, and then we'll hopefully be starting on getting the secondary harness on the car, on the engine, and getting ready for our first start. But we'll see how it goes. the way things have gone around the shop lately with Jim's car, I haven't had the best of luck. So cross your fingers. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, comment if you like. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.